Welcome back to Henry Felix Discourses. Today we'll be talking about global studies at Windsor. And I was a little torn about what to put for the picture on the thumbnail today because global studies calls out for putting a globe in, I suppose. It's not very imaginative. However, I put a special globe and we can take a second look at it. I'm all about convenience and I've got it right here for you. You may have noticed something about this globe. It's not a globe. It is a very distorted globe. The North American part is way out of whack, and I think you can see it now if you didn't see it before. If you didn't see it before, it's just because you glanced at it. I don't blame you. But I chose it as a metaphor a little bit for how when you purport to have a global perspective on things, often you still have the same hidebound perspective that you had before, just reimagined as a global perspective. This is taken through something called like a fisheye lens, I believe. And I think it's probably a picture of the Earth taken through a fisheye lens. And it makes everything look like a globe. And you can do some really amazing things with it. But this is what happens when you look through things through a lens. One of the favorite words of DEI, one of the favorite words of CRT. Viewing things through a lens of. Philosophically, there's really no way to view things without a lens, I suppose, if we really want to be philosophical about it. But in principle, try as we might, we probably can't get a balanced view of reality. I think you can try, however, and I think Windsor does try, and we'll have a look at how well they succeed with that. In practical terms, I can tell you one little story about just many years ago. I was getting so sick of the radio and TV, the news. It's all so repetitive. They only talk about the same few things. They never talk about anything but America, unless it's a real conflagration, or if it just serves the interests of throwing something in America into relief, or just how it relates to America. So there's just very little about that. So I started listening to the BBC, and I was thinking, well, this is great. I mean, they talk about Kenya, they talk about Australia, they talk about Hong Kong, they talk about all kinds of areas all over the world. This is amazing. And then I finally realized, they're actually just talking about the old empire and what's left of the Commonwealth. Okay. A lot of stuff gets left out, and I think we all have that challenge. So, putting that away, just a quick review of how to get to that PDF if you want to. Winsor School, okay, you look that up, you click on that and it'll go to the home page. You go up here to the upper right menu, go to About, then you go down here, it says Equity and Inclusion, you click that, that takes you here. This is already down at the bottom of the page, but you scroll down, click DEI Report, and you get here, and then you scroll down just a little bit and you click Read the Report, and the PDF will load for you. So let's see what it says about global studies. This, as a reminder, is supposed to be English and history put together. So we did English, we did history, now we're doing global studies and looking at that. The English and history departments collaborate to teach required courses in global studies, all of which are designed to broaden students' preparation for responsible participation in the global community. That preparation includes a commitment to pluralism and the concomitant respect for cultural diversity, as well as an understanding of globalization and its effects. To some degree on this one, I just want to count up words. There are a lot of keywords they used that are CRT words. And they're putting CRT into practice here. So that's the main point here, that they are doing that. It's the lens they're seeing the global community through. Continuing on, Windsor's Global Studies curriculum has included English and History Department course pairings, focusing on Russia, China, Africa, the Middle East, India, and South America. Right now, they don't have China and South America included in that. They do have Mandarin Chinese, but really, the courses on offer now are Africa, Middle East, and India. Each of these junior year courses ask the students not only to learn about and appreciate some of the world's cultural diversity, but to use that process of understanding others to reflect on their own identities. Empathetic, there's that word, understanding and seeing the world from the perspective of others fosters those shared values that bridge the gaps of cultural, ethnic, political, and religious difference. So I think it's a pretty good idea to put English and history together. They go together pretty well, and a lot of books are written about history and in that context, and history can even be affected by literature. So I don't see anything wrong with that in principle, and I'm also not looking for anything wrong. But I just want to note that they're really letting the students know that in case you didn't hear it loud enough in English or history, yes, this is a DEI curriculum, and which is undergirded by CRT. So there it is, and that's pretty much what I had to say about this. It amounts to 2 semesters out of their whole 8 years. They do this in their junior year. And that's not too much to ask, I suppose. I did look at some of the actual curriculum, and this is a topic for another time, really. But at some point we'll talk about the curriculum a little more. But I did go through and I looked at some of the stuff. And here we've got some of the English and the literature courses that they have that go with global studies. So I highlighted that so we can see which ones fulfill the global studies requirements. We've got African literature and, obviously, literature of the Middle East. There's that. Russian literature also. This interested me because Russia is part of Europe. So it's not really, are we being non-Eurocentric or what? So why exactly does Russia fit into the global perspective that they're thinking about? Well, I don't know exactly, but I'm looking at the books that they read, and they're talking about several short stories that represent individuals alienated from or oppressed by the Tsarist society in which they live. We'll investigate Russia at the turn of the century, just before the Bolshevik Revolution, by reading a play about the breakdown of the Russian aristocracy and the rise of the bourgeoisie. So this isn't really about the main great works of Russian literature, apparently. It has to do with the revolution. Then it moves on. We'll move on further to the 20th century and the Soviet system with a satirical novella making fun of Soviet science, bureaucracy, and masculinity, all things that are, fertile ground for making fun of them. Make of that what you will, but that's the focus. So it's not really, to me, if I were putting together something on Russian literature, it would probably have some other things other than just that. And I think it's a little bit of a clue into the following, because I also noticed as I went down, looking through this whole thing, I see The Empire Writes Back. Okay, that's this course right here. The highlighter isn't always working so well for some reason. But this course is about, it will explore the political, racial, cultural, and religious beliefs that inform the development of the British Empire. Okay, and it's about going against the British Empire and all talking about all that kind of stuff. All right, well, that fits into the global studies. But then if you come down here, this is what I found interesting. Irish literature is not included in global studies, but it's about colonialism and independence after Ireland suffered under British colonial rule for 700 years. And this is similarly about oppression. Oppression seems to be a running theme in a lot of this, and it's certainly here. But why would Irish literature not be global studies, but Russian literature would? They're both about being oppressed. The Irish are being oppressed by the British. And here we've got African, Caribbean, and Latin American and Indian regions being oppressed by the British. And that counts for global studies, but not Irish. While at the same time, Russian literature counts for global studies. So what's the common thread? This seems a little confusing. And I think it really comes down to Russian literature here is an opportunity to talk about Marxism. It's talking about the rise of the bourgeoisie. It's talking about Tsarist Russia. And they do talk about, obviously there's some criticism of the Soviets, but even that, in the world of CRT, is not a criticism of communism. That's a criticism of people who didn't implement communism right. Okay, so I can't prove that that's what they're doing, but it sure looks like it to me. You see this all the time, and in schools, but in private schools. They're still holding on to this idea that communism can work, and the problem is it's never been tried right. So this is why that fits into global studies, and Irish literature doesn't, because I guess the Irish are just a little too white and not communist enough, I suppose, even though there's the same rebellion as before. So I'll leave that out there as food for thought. So if it seems like these course descriptions are getting repetitive, it's because they are. The language of CRT does get exhausted after a while. It does seem like there are a lot of words at first and a lot of concepts. After a while, you realize that they're just mixing and matching a lot of the same words in different ways, and that they use different meanings for those words, and that they do that over and over and over again. Eventually it gets a little dull, and I have to assume it does for students too, because you go to the next class and it's like, okay, how does DEI apply to this now too? That has an echo in books like White Fragility, where the question is not whether race has to do with interaction, but how race has to do with an interaction. So here DEI is going to be the order of the day, regardless of the class. I would think it doesn't. I would argue that it doesn't even really fit global studies. I don't know why you need the language or the concepts of CRT for that. CRT did, after all, start as a concept in law school to be applied in America. Is taking CRT and applying it to global studies the same myopic attitude that you might have, that we see in the thumbnail, where we are taking our own issues and applying them to the rest of the world, or our interpretation of the rest of the world, without necessarily learning anything? And if we confine ourselves within the limits of the language of CRT, are we going to learn anything? I don't think it's necessary to have that in order to learn about how you study other cultures, see how their art interacts with their history, and so forth. And I think it does make you a better and more well-rounded person to do that. It's a matter of how it's applied. DEI is that application. Is applying that to everything really the right application of anything, or is it really just confining? So I think we'll leave it at that for today. Not every discourse has to be very long, and I would appreciate it if you so would like to leave me a like. It helps, and I would be very interested in any comments, good or bad. So, see you next time.